I called this meeting today with you, a group who I believe represents the white citizens of South Africa, to clarify the necessity of apartheid. As most of you know, apartheid means apartness in Afrikaans. It was issued in 1948 by Dr. Daniel F. Malan, the former Prime Minister of South Africa, and the National Party, a group of whites who were elected to make political decisions. It separates the whites and the blacks that live together in South Africa. You see, in 1948, South Africa was populated by 19 million blacks and only 4.5 million whites. However, the whites were ruling as they rightfully should. The National Party believed if they left the two races together, it would cause a war between them. So, they created a revolutionary government system that would let the two races prosper. This system is the smartest thing the government has ever come up with. That is why I, Prime Minister P.W. Botha, plan on not repealing it. No, I believe it helps our people. We will not be taken over by dirty blacks that have ruined our government and our white culture. As I stated in my speech in 1985, we are simply an honest people who have come out loud with a clear philosophy of how we want to live our own white life. The fact that blacks look like human beings and act like human beings do not necessarily make them sensible human beings. Hedgehogs are not porcupines and lizards are not crocodiles simply because they look alike. If God wanted us to be equal to the blacks, He would have created us all a uniform color and intellect. But He created us differently. The whites, blacks, yellows, rulers, and the ruled. Intellectually, we are superior to the blacks. That has been proven beyond any reasonable doubt over the years. Let us all accept that the black man is a symbol of poverty, mental inferiority, and laziness. Does any one of you really believe that the blacks can rule this country? I certainly don't. And still, some of you whites believe that apartheid is bad. Well, all I have to say is that we enforce it because the alternative is too ghastly to contemplate. The 25 laws that have been passed during apartheid have effectively kept the blacks from ruining our country. This apartheid revolution is unquestionably a good one, and every white South African citizen should agree with me. Thank you for the meeting. It is now adjourned. Siyahamba kukunyen penko, siyahamba kukunyen penko, siyahamba, siyahamba kukunyen penko. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. I'm black. My wife is black. My children are black. We live in a world where we are discriminated against and spit at. When we're suffering, they turn their backs. When we protest, we're put in jail to rot to death. P.W. Botha is continuing the laws that were put up so long ago that limits our rights and abilities. As blacks are forced to live in fantastics, land specifically for our race. We're forced to live in shacks made of metal and tents made of thin fabric, while the whites live in spacious mansions. And so, in my small hut, I tried my best to provide for my son and daughter, but I never knew when our next meal would come. As much as it hurt me to leave my family, I knew I had to go to the white territory to find a job that would support them. Blacks are only allowed in the white territory if they're working and carrying a passbook, a document containing race classification, address, and job details. I'm now a servant for P.W. Botha. I'm paid little, but I send whatever I make to my wife and my children. Because I live so far away, I only get to see my family one time a year. Apartheid not only took away my rights, but it took away my ability to be there for my kids, to be a loving father that's there for them. I now live at Vista Hostel, a place for workers to stay, and it has been my home for more than a long time. It's one of the many badly built and poorly set up hostels. As Mandalyn Makova, a factory worker that lived in the hostel with me once said, we came here to work for our families, but it is the white men who get all the wealth, and it is us who must do all the work. I know because I have seen this town grow and prosper. Them and their families are rich, while we are forced to live in dirty hostels while their families suffer. How is this fair? What do we do to deserve this? Nothing. We're evil for being black, for being different, for standing out. Just like me, many blacks know that this is unfair. That's why, even though it's against the law, they protest. They cause an uproar. They revolt against this cruel government. Just recently, blacks gathered in Sharpeville, a white town, and they were armed with stones. The purpose was to stop the pass laws, a group of laws that require blacks to carry passbooks in the white territory. The police came, and they used many weapons to kill as many people as possible. The riot stopped when almost 50 people were killed, and many more were wounded severely. The pass laws weren't even repealed, but it did show the real chaos that apartheid causes. We will keep on fighting apartheid until the day we die. We sing Sia Hamba Kukinyen Kwenkos as we protest. So Sia Hamba Kukinyen Kwenkos. We will keep on marching in the light of God. We will not go down without a fight. Sia Hamba Kukinyen Kwenkos. Sia Hamba Kukinyen Kwenkos. Sia Hamba Kukinyen Kwenkos. Sia Hamba Kukinyen Kwenkos. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching. We are marching in the light of God. Your Highnesses, Majesties, comrades, friends, and my loyal South Africans, I, Nelson Mandela, welcome you to the beginning of a new world. I stand here today to tell you that apartheid has been reformed. The monster, the disaster that cost so many lives and so many loved ones is gone. I was sent to prison for 27 years because I knew we deserved rights. Prison was rough, and since I was black, I had the worst of all. But, as I once said, more powerful than my fear of the dreadful conditions I may be subjected to is my hatred for the conditions the free blacks out and around South Africa were being subjected to. Although apartheid was a burden, a disaster, a monster, terrible system that resulted in several notorious massacres and governments that lied and deceived on a massive scale, it had an impact on not just South Africa, but the rest of the world. It showed people what happens when you disregard human rights. It is shaping the government in South Africa, and it will continue changing the way we South Africans live forever. South Africa is now reformed into a democracy. I am the first black president of South Africa. And so, in conclusion, I wish to quote my words that I spoke in my inauguration speech earlier this year. They are as true today as they were then. We must therefore act together as a united nation for national reconciliation, for the birth of a new world. Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all. Let there be bread, water, and salt for all. We enter into a covenant in which all South Africans, both black and white, will be able to walk tall without any fear in their hearts, assured of their inalienable right to human dignity. So God bless Africa. Thank you.